AI without data? And to understand the statement with impactful context, I invite Mr. Rohit Vyas, Country Head of Pre-Sales, Confluent India, to share the immense value of streaming data for AI and mechanisms with which commissioned AI provides consistent, veritable, and governed outcomes.
Thanks very much. Am I audible? All right. Good afternoon. The lunch was very good. The scramble for the food was very high. I was worrying to myself that with so much of delicious food in, it might become a snooze fest, but we will not have that. Okay? So we'll keep it active. I am very grateful to our friends in Aerospike for having us here. Aerospike and Confluent are natural allies. Now we work together, and pleasure to talk to you today. Okay? So, streaming data for AI without hallucination. And hallucination is something that we have all discussed in the past. We might have seen in the past as well. ChatGPT or Gemini throwing up responses to prompts which are not very practical, if you will. So these are the things that we have seen, but what's happening behind the scenes is something that we should get to know. By the way, maybe there are several of you who know Confluent, maybe who those don't. We are the Kafka company, so founded by the authors of Kafka, and this is the enterprise flavor of that. In India, pretty much to what Aerospike was saying early on in the morning, your every day is touched by Confluent in some or the other way. If you're doing UPI transactions, if you're taking an Uber ride, if you're ordering food, if you're doing fashion shopping, if you are doing fantasy gaming, you are touching Kafka, you're touching Confluent. So very humbly proud to be associated with everybody's lives, and to also see that how the business is transforming. Slow data is dead data, pretty much, right? That's where we are coming to, and that's why the new way of doing business is real time. It is now, okay? Those who are the architects here, developers, transformation leaders, they know that the biggest barrier is silos. The biggest barrier to transformation of business is basically your information locked away into many different fragmented spaghetti architecture patterns. This is a reality, okay? And maybe you are doing things, and we have heard a lot of amazing thoughts and industry experiences from the speakers before, who have done things, whether it is Airtel, whether it is Myntra, HDFC Bank, Cred, they have done amazing things to basically keep the data moving so that the business is done in the now, and the business decisions are done in the now, so that you get the experience of what you require for. Very brief about Apache Kafka, something that you would know, I believe, which is basically the real-time messaging backbone, the industry de facto at this point of time. It can retain the data if you like. It does amazing data integration and correlation, and we'll talk more. Now, since there is thought leadership on the roadmap of Apache Kafka, we also bring to the conferences and events like this our thought leadership as to what does a complete data streaming platform look like. And we are gravitating towards AI, but just to build up the context. So you have to have stream, you have to have connect, you have to have governance, you have to have processing, right? So friends from Cred were talking about Flink. We will also talk a little about Flink, but that's, the, again, industry de facto for stream processing, okay? Similarly, top 5 predictions for data in motion this year and foreseeable year +1, +2. So multi-cloud will continue. Serverless stream processing is a reality. Flink, that is stream sharing, data contracts for governance, and of course, artificial intelligence. Quick thing also is that unless you are able to have a seamless connectivity, because Kafka is an enterprise integration pattern, unless you are able to have seamless connectivity, you are not doing much essentially, right? I mean, you are spinning wheels, not getting anywhere much. So that's a robust portfolio of connectors, and of course, Aerospike is there as well. And the simple use case is Kafka brings in the data and can sync into Aerospike, and then you can do magic after that. Okay? A variety of use cases are possible if you're looking at the top right-hand side, and at the middle, machine learning engines, your OLAP, your OLTP, your MIS, your SIEM, cybersecurity, whatever use case that leverages data is touched by Kafka. And then whatever source of data, we don't care. You could bring in anything and everything, and you could build it under a centralized platform of streaming, right? Let's get more specific into AI. So yes, indeed and intentionally, the beginning of the conversation is that there is no AI without data. I would go ahead and say there is no applications without data. Some of you would agree that there are no operations without data. Data is everything, and we are in the business of data, right? So typically two types of AI, and would you agree if I say that predictive AI has been sitting with us, among us, for about 11 years now? Would you agree so? That was more in the time of IT ops, where your IT ops, managers and manager of managers in the system, monitoring space, they were bringing this concept of having a pattern identification of your IT ops, giving you a line, a minima, maxima kind of a thing. When will you exhaust your storage? When will you exhaust your compute? It is that old. And now the Gen AI has made a buzz. Gen AI is disrupting the space a lot. But in my humble opinion, Gen AI is a very generic capability. It is pretty much like internet. So when internet came in, when 5G came in, when mobile phones came in, it was not a disruptive thing which could do a specific thing. It does many things. The same thing is with Gen AI. Okay? We'll have a look at that. Look at the fraud detection and analytics use case. Okay? It is just not the banks, by the way. You heard it from Airtel, you heard it from Cred, you heard it from HDFC Bank, you heard from Mindra as well. Fraud is such a ubiquitous problem because of the human creativity again, that you have to involve a lot of intelligence and real-timeness to manage fraud. Now see, this is a case. Say if I am a globetrotter and I am moving around the world, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and I am doing X number of transactions with my financial instrument in the hand, which may be a card, how does my bank know about it? And by the way, it is not just knowing about it, it's basically to also put in the context of my user journey so far, my spend journey so far, my geolocation so far, and try to stitch a story together whether Rohit is a genuine customer traveling or Rohit is a money launderer traveling, right? It's a difference between that. Now this is a very real thing, and this is impossible to do unless you have real-time data and unless you have context building. This cannot work with mere databases. This cannot work with batch processes. This cannot work with end-of-day processes. This has to be now. Okay, and we'll build more. So look at a Gen AI use case, right? Prompt. So this is a classic chatbot. Okay, so you're going to take a flight, and if it is Bangalore, it is very likely that a flight will get delayed. And you are trying to work with the chatbot and saying, okay, what are the situations in which I will be able to fly out? Now see what is happening here. This is a Gen AI use case. What's happening here is you are sending some composite prompts to the engine. A composite prompt basically is which are made up of one or more elemental questions, right? So a prompt to a LLM or an SLM can be, where does the current Prime Minister of India come from? Now this prompt basically has two questions. One is, who is the Prime Minister of India? Second is, where does he come from? If your AI engine and the associated data around it, data infrastructure around it, is able to see that your LLM is able to break that properly into two subcomposites, address them at their own level with a reference data which is current. So if the reference data is as old as Manmohan Singh's time, this is going to give you a wrong answer, right? So the data has to be current, the training has to be right, the inferencing model has to be current, and has to be happening now so that you can make a decision. Now imagine if the flight time here, or maybe the flight cost here, is impacted by hallucination, what do? You are putting blind faith, on this chatbot, and if you were to go and make a decision based on that blind faith, but the wrong data, there you are in trouble, and then you will bring the airline in trouble. And imagine that happens to 1,000 people on the same day. That's a big problem. University of Singapore believes that you can never eliminate hallucination from GenAI. Do you know why? Very simple reason. Because it is generative AI. So there is an inherent element of creativity in that. And if you are creative, you are bound to have some hallucination. But the point is, you should be able to control that hallucination within acceptable limits. So that acceptable limit is that the Prime Minister of India cannot be named as somebody from the neighborhood. The Prime Minister of India is not from Bengal, for example. I mean, you have to have those guardrails and controls which basically just cannot be left to the core LLM. That's an associated infrastructure which we will talk about. Okay? That being said, what are the challenges that today the Gen AI infrastructure setup or the entire solutioning faces, right? You miss real-time contextual data. The biggest example is, so OpenAI is Confluent customer. And if you remember, and if you're using OpenAI last year, anytime last year, you would see at the bottom left that they were using reference data from year N-1, which was 2022. Do you remember that? Which means your prompts are getting answers which are old. Okay, it was what it is. OpenAI now uses Confluent. So their ingest pipeline for model training and model inferencing is real time. So now ChatGPT-4 is real time. Innovation, friction, and lock-in. Build versus buy, okay? So you want to build things, you want to buy things, how do you put them together? Will they talk together? Will there be friction in that? Will there be custom development required? The brain can be fogged with that. That's a problem that happens today. And of course, the last thing but not the least is the weak security and governance. This is the main cause of hallucination because the AI responses become uncontrolled. Okay? Now, let's look at data pipelines. So data pipelines, again, are very real and very evident to you. You have built some of those, you have managed many of those, things like that. What is the classic problem do you find with data pipelines? The classic problem is in ETL. And the problem is in flaky ETL. If on the left-hand side, you have multitude of different sources of data, you have own customized extract mechanisms, own customized transform mechanisms. Good luck with your load then after that, right? And then there is another concept which is called as reverse ETL. How many of you have used or heard of reverse ETL? Have you? Reverse ETL is very real because the world has traditionally made us to believe that data journey starts from the left and the origin, gets somehow magically transformed in between and sinks into the world of data warehouse where there is the graveyard of data. It's going to die there. That is not the fact. OLTP and OLAP have to work together. So OLTP is running your business. OLAP is growing your business. So when you do OLAP, that could be AI or that could be traditional analytics. Unless you are able to take those learnings and come back and put into the operational world, how good is that analytics? It is not. So to be able to bring that back into the operations, what you need is reverse ETL. How many people are able to effectively do that today? Very small fraction. Can you do that with a centralized data streaming layer? Yes, you can do that. Okay? And this becomes very important for AI as well. Exactly what we talked about. So if you have a central data layer, which is basically supporting streaming, and by the way, data streaming, real-time data, they have become such ubiquitous cliche terms now that they could have some different meanings for different people. What I understand streaming data is that you shift left your data scrubbing, your data processing, your data inferencing as close to the origin of data as possible. In other words, reduce the distance between data and decision. That is called data streaming. Now that could come at 20 milliseconds, that could come at 0.5 millisecond, 1 second, it is contextual. Okay? So, remember this concept in the mind, and we are going ahead with advanced things, right? So how do we do it in Confluent? So you have data sources, okay? Structured, unstructured, semi-structured, no hassles at all. Systems of record, systems of inferencing, systems of differentiation, innovation. People who read Gartner, they will know these things. Then you bring it all into a central data streaming layer. In that data streaming layer, you are basically putting a robust governance on your ingested data. You impose a schema on top of that. You impose transform on top of the data, so that the moment it comes in and you run these things on top of your inbound stream, you basically have created a very nice bronze to silver state of data, very easily, right in the middle. Could you do gold state of the data? Yes, you could do that. But today we are seeing that the adoption is hybrid. So the gold standard of data could sit in your database, data warehouse, data lake, and then there are some advanced business rules that run onto data. That's your gold standard. But grand, you are still saving cost and time and effort on scrubbing that data. Now, once it is there, then you have the ability, remember the 120 plus connectors, you have the ability to move that data out, okay, to the sink side, and the sink could be your conventional data stores, there could be your AI/ML models, there could be your data warehouses, data lakes, what have you. And the idea is, if I have removed batch processing from this game, I have saved you those crucial hours, days to make decision. Okay? So this is a very high-level representation before we dive more in. A very high-level representation of how we play where through the value chain. Again, in addition to Aerospike, of course, we understand that AI is not the game of one person. Definitely not the game of one vendor. It has to be a coming together of a village. That's what you are seeing here. So from cloud providers on to AI technology providers to model providers, system integrators, we have a composite story which we play together and deliver. Okay? We have discussed this in a bit. What I want to get into the real thing is LLM-enabled applications, typically GenAI use cases, have these 4 legs, if you will, or 4 pillars: data augmentation, inferencing of the model, workflow definition, post-processing. Okay? As simple as that. Now we will say how do we play in each area. Data augmentation. This is classic OpenAI. What OpenAI is doing with Confluent is this. The idea is that instead of relying upon old data, on outdated data, you are able to bring in current, fresh data. But the thing also is that the LLMs are very expensive to retrain. So the LLMs in the market today, the llamas and the other ones, they are multi-purpose, reusable LLMs. So they are already trained on a data set. But what's happening is this: the moment you are typing a prompt, at that very point in time, there is a contextualization that happens on the prompt. The contextualization then can also be augmented by RAG. You know about RAG as well, retrievable augmented generation. And then you are able to bring a much more confident, high trust score response out, which means that your data engineering is becoming prompt time. Now this is very different to predictive AI. In predictive AI, you had your models which could identify patterns based on historical data. Okay? But this is prompt time. The moment you are typing it, your data engineering has to start then, which means real timeliness, which means current data. Your RAG cannot depend upon outdated data, it has to be current data. So data augmentation is the first story where streaming works. Second is inferencing. Now this is actually where the power of the LLM comes in and is basically able to put together a context and start shaping a response. Now what you are seeing here is from a web application, for example, if a prompt is coming in, it comes through the streaming layer. You are imposing a data governance on top of it. And through a consumer group, again, Kafka concept, you are able to send it out to a LLM API, and you are also able to talk to a vector data store so that the embedding, the contextualization of ingested data, the prompt, and the reasoning agents can all work together and create that inference. This is a logical architecture of imposing data streaming capability in the inferencing part. Workflow. Remember the question I asked you, right, which is composite query or composite prompt, Prime Minister, his location. In the workflow definition, this is where your AI layer is going to fragment out the query, make sense of it individually, get a trust score of the response, again put it together and give it out as a response to you. This is basically a workflow that's happening. Again, you are seeing that the data streaming layer is front line and center here. It takes in the prompt, sends it out to the vector, sends it out and gets the back, sends it out to the inferencing agents, comes back and puts it again in front of the LLM, gets a response and can send it out to the UI. Now, I'm talking about these things from the perspective of real-time layer. Imagine this is not there and there is a point-to-point connection, there is an API connection, there is a batch process, micro-batch. Can you imagine the problem? What's happening at that point of time? Flakiness of enterprise integration. And that flakiness can cost you money because you're already spending money onto the, subscribing to the LLM and to the AI topics on top of that. Have a data layer that aids your investment into AI. Okay? Post-processing. I'm just coming towards the end of my presentation now. This is where the governance comes into the picture. Research and experience have proved that leaving the governance rules to the LLM engine is not the best thing. It is always good to leave it outside the LLM. That's why what you are seeing is a post-processing consumer group, for example, here. So once the prompt is sent in and inference is made, a response is generated, then a post-processing governance has to be run on top of that, which the streaming layer can all handle in the same pace, and then give the response out. And this can be a difference between a person having a foot in the mouth moment with the prompt response versus a confident response. Post-processing. Not left to the AI, but offloaded from it, and all interfaced and governed by the superhighway of data streaming, Kafka in this case. So these are generally the use cases that we are seeing: semantic search, customer service, chatbot, copilot, whatever you call, and task automation as well. And we are playing a part in majority of those. Very happy that Myntra were presenting here and they were talking about feature engineering, and of course we play a part there as well. We have a couple of more customers who are doing more in context FAQs. So you are either playing a game or you are doing something and you want help at that point of time. Your chatbot should not send you to the square one. It should give you an in-context query resolution. That's what we do as well, working with the stack. So just to quickly summarize, we took a short journey, a reasonably depth of a journey through how data streaming is relevant to the GenAI use cases. And that's the way I would like to end it, that data streaming is calling the future. Here we are, where are you? Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rohit. Requesting you to please remain on stage. I also request Mr. Kushal Bansali from Aerospike to honor and please hand over the token of appreciation to Mr. Rohit. Thank you very much for the relevance, the context, the validity and efficacy of AI outcomes, and crucial it is that training references data is fresh, curated and governed. Thank you once again for being here with us today.